The Trump Justice Department just pulled the plug on police reform deals tied to the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, just days before the 5th anniversary of Floyd's murder. That means the federal government, they're actually walking away from promises that they made to fix the police in both Minneapolis and Louisville. Promises that were made after the world watched George Floyd's final breath and heard how the cops riddled Breonna Taylor's body with bullets in her own home during a botched raid that happened at her house but was intended for another house. These deals, which are called consent decrees, were supposed to force fundamental, structural, ground-up changes in how police are trained and how police use force and how police are held accountable. But now Donald's DOJ said, nah, it's not our job. We're not responsible for what they call micromanaging local cops. Now, we're going to get into all of this, but I just want you to understand how big a deal that is, because this sends a message, right, that the federal government is not interested in improving racist policing. And even if it's proven that the racist policing is happening, they ain't necessarily going to do anything about it. And of course, Minnesota is a little more complicated because it's not just the federal government involved in this. They're also bound to a state level agreement. And the police chiefs in both places are saying, we're going to keep pushing for it to change. But let's keep it 100 here, right? Without federal pressure, without oversight, without force, how accountable are they really going to be? So now folk are asking, if 5 years, 2 names of dead martyrs, we're talking about Black martyrs, and a global movement aren't enough to change or enact police reform, what will be? And that's where I want to kind of drill down just for a second. We're going to be here long tonight, but I want to just drill down on that for a second because I think it's incredibly important to think about. First, the why of it. Donald Trump and his DOJ are not pulling the plug on police reform deals 5 days before the death of George Floyd just because. They're sending a message. A not so subtle message to not just the Black people, not just to police active, anti-police activists, police reform activists, abolitionists, etc. This is to the whole world. And this is straight out of the Republican playbook. I remember when George Bush waited till like Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. I'm talking about George W. Bush, baby Bush. He waited until MLK's birthday to advance an attack on affirmative action. And I remember asking Jesse Jackson, or hearing, I didn't ask him, but Jesse Jackson said, this ain't no coincidence. He said, this is what he called it countercultural politics. He said, they know that our reaction will galvanize the right. In other words, we're all going to be, oh my God, they got rid of these consent decrees on George Floyd's birthday, or is it their anniversary of his murder? How could they? We get so mad. And Donald Trump fundraises off of it. J.D. Vance fundraises off of it. The RNC fundraises off of it. All the right-wing news platforms fundraise off of it. They get views off of it. It's not a coincidence that they do it. They're not tone deaf. They hear the tone. They just don't care. The next piece of this, of course, is what it actually means. You know, it's always a fool's errand to engage the police about policing the police. Not to say we don't have to dot our I's and cross our T's. We need to follow the chains of command, but we should never have the expectation that the police are going to police themselves. It's not just that you don't want wolves to watch the sheep. You also don't want wolves to hold other wolves accountable because they don't see nothing wrong with what the wolf is doing. And that's what happens with the police. Police can't oversee themselves. When the police oversee themselves, we know what happens because that's been the history of policing. When you look at places like Los Angeles, think about in the 90s when LAPD, the Los Angeles Police Department was known for its brutal violence, its brutal attacks on everyday people, especially in South Central Los Angeles. People were submitting brutality complaints. People were submitting internal affairs investigation requests, and you know what they would do? They'd read it and they'd reject it. I remember when I submitted a report against a police officer in Philadelphia, and what they did was they let me write up my statement. They let me say everything that happened, and then they took my statement, showed it to the officer who I was complaining about, and then allowed him to respond to my specific complaints. Of course, he can make up something if he knows exactly what I said. Compare that to what police do when they arrest two suspects. They separate them. They put one in here, one over there. You know what I'm saying? They see whose story's right. They see what matches up. They hold them accountable separately. That's not what police do with each other. It's just an example. My point is, police can't oversee themselves, in the structural racism that we see in police departments is not unique to Minneapolis. It's not unique to Louisville. I wrote a book called Nobody that looked at the Ferguson Police Department. We saw the same thing there, the racist memos and emails and policing practices. The fact that Mike Brown was arrested jaywalking tells you a whole lot. My point is, you need some kind of oversight, and it can't just be internal affairs. It can't just be the snitch squad inside the police. Come on, we know better. And so the federal government overseeing these police were a proposed solution by the reform wing of the police accountability movement, or of the anti-carceral movement, or whatever you want to call it. Now, I want to be very clear. I'm an abolitionist. This isn't my strand of attack. This isn't my strategy. I don't believe that this works. There are certain kinds of reforms, what we will call abolitionist reforms, that move us toward liberation, that move us toward the ultimate goal of producing a world without police and prisons. There are others, which we call reformist reforms. I'm using the language of Ruth Wilson Gilmore here, that keep us locked into where we are and trick us into believing that policing and prisons are salvageable, reformable, fixable, and they are not. They are absolutely not those things. So what do? We have to imagine abolitionist alternatives. Moments like this are why Trump's not an aberration. It's easy to make Trump the boogeyman. But it was Joe Biden that was saying Blue Lives Matter. He was the one who said that he wouldn't ever defund the police. He's the one who said that we need more police. And Obama wasn't much different when it comes to police. Now, he's different when it comes to prison, particularly federal prison, particularly privatized prison, etc., particularly bail. We could talk about some things with Obama, but at the core, they're all liberal reformers or conservative reformers who ultimately believe in the carceral state and will do everything they can to support it and bolster it and expand it. So if you want to live in a world where people aren't overseen, surveilled, coerced, and controlled by racist police departments, if you want to live in a world where we look to heal and to restore and to repair rather than to contain and confine and blame and criminalize, then we got to do something different. So please don't think that this is proof of how awful Trump is. Trump is definitely awful in all the ways, but this is proof of how intractable police misconduct and police dishonesty, police corruption is, and how bound up it is and all these other things. So yeah, we can be mad at Trump and frustrated with Trump, but please understand that this is a much bigger problem that will not get fixed the way y'all think it will.